I want to move the amendment on behalf of the Anti-Austerity Alliance People Before Profit, and I also want to express our solidarity and support for the Dublin bus workers who go on strike tomorrow. I think it will be very instructive to watch the difference in how those low-paid workers looking for a modest pay increase are treated compared to how Apple has been treated, one of the biggest corporations in the world, by the government and the media. There's a woman called Leona Helmsley who coined the phrase, "We don't pay taxes, only the little people pay taxes." She was a multi-millionaire in the US who, ironically, was later jailed for tax evasion. If she was in Ireland today, she'd be a national hero. The government would be valiantly fighting in Europe for her right not to pay any taxes. The Irish Independent would be screaming about our sovereign right for her not to pay taxes. She would be a national hero, because when you boil it down, the government's so-called strategy of tax competition, what it means is only the little people pay taxes. Ireland is, by design of the establishment political parties, a key tax haven for the biggest corporations in the world to pay practically zero tax. And the Dáil, to its shame today, will pass a motion that could have been drafted by George Orwell in 1984. It will commit itself to the highest international standards in transparency. It will resolve that no company or individual receives preferential tax treatment. But both things that simply aren't true. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. I mean, the Dáil can vote if it wants to say black is white and white is black, but it won't change the reality. And those who are proposing this motion, they know it's not the truth. They know it's not the reality. And the reality, and it's very hard for the government to hear, and it's hard for their international reputation as a tax haven, the reality is that Ireland is a tax haven. There's been a huge campaign of spin over the past week to try and confuse this issue, when the reality is very, very simple. I'll spell it out. The government, supported by Fianna Fáil, supported by Labour, are waging a fight with public money to defend the right of one of the biggest corporations in the world to pay no tax. It is as simple as that. They're the same parties who, when asked to cut the minimum wage, said yes, sir. When told to take 42% of the European banking crisis on the shoulders of ordinary people, said yes, of course. When elected to burn the Anglo bondholders, told they couldn't do it, they meekly accepted it. And now they propose to fight for the right of small nations. And the difference is that this time it's a corporation which has to pay. One element of the spin over the last few days has been the idea that this money isn't really owed to Ireland. The government has become advocates of tax justice for developing countries around the world. There is no logic in that whatsoever, because the case that the Irish government is going to take is not a case that's going to say someone else is owed this money. It's a case to say that Apple should keep this money. It's a case to say that an extra 13 to 19 billion euros should go on top of the 200 billion euro cash pile that they already have. There was the idea that the state got a clean bill of health in terms of other tax arrangements. That's simply not the case. There was the idea that under EU rules, the money could be used only to pay down the debt. Again, not the case. Confirmed that it could be used, even within restrictive EU rules, for capital expenditure, building homes, schools, hospitals, public investment in green energy, and so on. But the central core big lie that the government is using is the idea that Ireland is at the forefront of the fight against tax evasion, against tax havens. I'd say there's experts around the world laughing at it. And the government, they know it's not true, because the truth is exactly the opposite. Ireland has been, is, continues to be at the forefront of a global chain of tax avoidance and tax evasion by big corporations. That's a fact. The UN's Philip Alston said nobody believes that Ireland is not a tax haven. Any number of other experts could be cited. Nobody outside of the government backbenchers, perhaps, believe the idea that Ireland is not a tax haven. And huge amounts of spin are done to get away from that reality. Look at the Apple case. I mean, two companies, Apple Operations Europe and Apple Sales International, running profits of over 100 billion euros through Ireland and paying practically zero tax. That's the operation of a tax haven. And the government's response, it's to use this euphemism, which is used in the briefing, about a mismatch of tax jurisdictions. And it's this idea that somehow Ireland accidentally ended up as a tax haven and the corporations are taking advantage of a mismatch in order to not pay any tax. It was written in such a way, and that rulings were given to Apple explicitly to tell them that they could operate in such a way. The thing is, the double Irish was not an accident, it was designed. It was designed so Ireland could be a tax haven. Deputy Martin made much of our 12.5% rate. But look, the same year that Apple Sales International paid a rate of 0.05%, Google Ireland Limited made profits of 9 billion, paid taxes of 22.2 million, a rate of 1/4%. Facebook Ireland, profits of 1 billion, taxes of 3.2 million, a rate of 1/3%. Apple isn't alone. Other multinational corporations also evaded of the same tax con on ordinary people through the double Irish. And it's not just the operation of the double Irish. I mean, Enda Kenny famously a while ago said we don't do brass plate operations. He should wander down the road to the IFSC. He should wander down to 70 Sir John Rogerson's Quay, where he'll find 78,000 companies with brass plates registered there. He should wander down to 5 Harbour Market Place, where he'll find a building that houses 250 companies controlling 2 billion worth of assets, but he won't find any employees. He should look at the fact that Ireland hosts over half of the world's top 50 banks and half of the top 20 insurance companies. They're really not here for the weather. These companies in the IFC employ relatively few people. They're here because Ireland is a key chain in a global link of tax avoidance and tax evasion. And that continues. The double Irish continues today. It will continue until 2020. The knowledge box that the government has made much of, pretending that it's something that is getting rid of the tax haven status, it's designed to continue the tax haven status because it became too hot to continue with double Irish. Read what they said about it. They said it's to, quote, enhance further the competitiveness of Ireland's overall corporate tax regime. And this is not a victimless crime. 100 billion euros a year lost to developing countries as a result of tax avoidance and the operation of tax havens like Ireland. Up to €1 trillion lost in the EU by people avoiding and evading paying tax. In this country, while Apple, Google, Facebook, the rest of them should have been paying tax, we had the development of a massive crisis in our health service. The people on hospital trolleys, they're the victims. A massive housing crisis, the 2,000 children, they're the victims. A crisis in education, the people who can't have access to SNAs, they're the victims. And so the double Irish should be dismantled, the knowledge box should not be proceeded with, the appeal should be dropped, we should take the 13 billion and use it for people's needs. The last point is that the political price for this for the government is going to be immense, and it deserves to be immense. Let them try to come now for water charges. Let them justify the children who are homeless. Let them stand over the hospital waiting list. And every time people will say, correctly and simply, well, you had a choice, and you fought to use public money to fight to keep this money to add to the cash pile that Apple already says. This is the government's bank bailout moment. It's going to hang over your heads until your hastened departure. You'll feel it in the budget. We see it in terms of the role of the independents. And it goes broader than that. It's not just about Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, the independents and Labour. It proves a fundamental point that James Connolly made, that governments in capitalist society are but committees of the rich to manage the affairs of the capitalist class. It's as simple as that. That's the difference in this issue, because a big corporation, their massive profits, their cash pile was threatened. That's why the government is standing up for them, because all of the establishment parties, they all represent the rich. They all represent the 1%. We need rid of this committee of the rich. We don't need it replaced with a reconfigured another committee of the rich. We need a government of the left. We need a government with socialist policies, a government that will represent the majority.